Hands down, I would recommend that everyone understands what their Kolbe score is, Kolbe, Kolbe.com, the Kolbe Index. That has been a game changer for me, and it's allowed me the permission to double down on my natural instinctual talents. It's not a personality assessment. It's about how you instinctually get stuff done, and where your use of energy units in a given day, week, or year can cause possible potential burnout with things. So for me, it's something I probably communicate with people on an almost daily basis, and that directly leads to my connection with the Strategic Coach organization, which I'm a member of, and I would highly encourage anyone on their entrepreneurial journey.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Richard Canfield, and Richard grew up in a family-owned business, and where they did, I think, porta potty services, if I'm correct. And then after going to high school, started out as an electrician out of high school. Also started doing a lot of learning or taking advantage of a lot of different learning opportunities with joining groups and doing seminars and otherwise expanding the knowledge base. Afterwards got into some real estate, and then got into the process of becoming or into how people can become their own banker and teaching them that and helping them along that part of their journeys. And that's leads them to where he's at today. So with that much as introduction, welcome on the podcast, Richard.
Excited to be with you here, Devin, and looking forward to having some fun and providing a lot of value as much as we can in the time that we have today.
Absolutely. So excited to have you on. Looking forward to a great discussion. So I just gave the 30,000 or 30-second version of a much longer journey. So why don't we rewind and unpack that a bit, and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started to growing up in a family that was in the porta potty business.
Well, a long time ago, I think my dad realized that he was effectively unemployable by other individuals, and I think when you churn through enough employment opportunities, you come to realize that maybe you need to be your own boss. And they moved out to a farming community. I'm from a very small farming community in Alberta, Canada, and the getting a septic tank cleaned, you realize, oh, that's even something that you do. You got to hire someone to do that, and so an opportunity came about where he could buy another gentleman's truck and sort of take over his clientele and start building his own. And then later on, my mom, who had a job for actually the liquor control board, which basically got privatized in the province of Alberta, so she was losing that position, and so there was going to be out of a job. So what do we do now? Well, we're already in the pile of crap. Why don't we just double down essentially on that environment? So that's kind of the conversation that was had over the kitchen table. And lo and behold, it's like, well, we found some existing portable toilets, got a couple, tested it out for a little while, and then got a contract for a rodeo. They needed a whole bunch more we didn't have, so we had to go buy them. And then that led to expansion and trucks and equipment and trailers and a lot of little yellow and green buildings dotted all over our 10 acres surrounded by farmland. And so growing up, I learned how to build them, move them, ship them, clean them, take them everywhere, really operate the logistic aspect of a business that's spread out over a lot of miles. And so it was a very interesting and I don't take anything away from my upbringing, but I also learned that you had to work hard quite a bit. And there were times when I would, if you imagine you're supposed to be studying for an exam in high school, but yet you're leaving the school and you're jumping into a truck with a tank on the back and you're driving to another community to go deal with outhouses. It's a little bit of a different environment than maybe the average bear, if that kind of makes sense. So, all those create, they create, I would like to say there were probably character building opportunities along the way. And what's interesting is I didn't realize this until much later. A lot of times things come to you as you have time to reassess or evaluate lessons that you learn in life. They don't even know were lessons. And I realized that I actually got pretty good at sales to some degree because I could sell my friends on the ability that we were going to go do something later But before we could go do that, we were going to go on a portable toilet run. In other words, I'm going to get you to help me deliver some stuff to some other location. And then when that's done and completed, so I was able to negotiate a lot of free labor. And I realized that it was a skill that, both my parents had, and I just kind of developed it, I think, naturally. So I didn't understand that I was selling people on the idea of getting them to do some work or helping me out. The reality is people were happy to help you out in a small community. But ultimately that became something that has really resonated with me as I've gotten older, and understanding that, that's more of an innate skill that was developed through let's call it fire to some degree, and has really proven to be a valuable skill for me over time. Shooting forward, getting out of that industry, my parents wanted me to go be a lawyer, coincidentally, and I said I'm probably not meant for a college education. I think I would probably punch out a professor if I got there in the environment. Probably not the best place for me to be. So opportunity came up to get into trades. I'm a very tactile individual. I actually loved it. I really loved being an electrician. It's a wonderful career for many people. But the problem I realized in that is it was always just a stopgap. I knew that wasn't probably going to be the thing I was doing long term. It was just a stopgap mechanism. Much as I enjoyed it, I enjoyed working and teaching with apprentices. I realized the things that I enjoyed about it wasn't the job itself. It was the ability to help or engage with other people in some way. And fundamentally, I can't really help people in a transformative fashion. Everything in an electrical environment is transactional. You're working for a big company, you're building someone else's, building, you're working in a government facility that's like a hospital. So I worked at a lot of, and I built a maximum security prison. I worked at a lot of institutional level type projects before moving into the oil field, where, my last 2 years in that career, I call it my penance in Fort McMurray, where is basically Oilberta, if you're familiar. So a lot of that dirty oil coming out of the ground or whatever. So I was involved in working on an electrical project there, made a lot of great relationships. But again, what really activated for me was kind of the sales skills scenario of being able to negotiate getting the work that I wanted done in a timely fashion by positioning people around me to agree to certain things, getting permits and that sort of stuff. So, when I was at a point where we had, job trailers, and there would be 40 or so guys in each job trailer, and I would get them together in one, and I was telling them how to, put their registered accounts to work that the company was giving them freely every time they put an hour in, and they weren't setting it up or managing it or looking at it. And I was educating them, hey, did you know you can invest in some real estate? Did you know you could do private lending? Did you know you could do blank and blank and blank? I realized I was just in the wrong industry. So shooting forward to February 6th of 2008 was my final day as an electrician. So I'm 15 years basically recovering from that environment. And it wasn't long after that in August of 2009, after I got my real estate license and I was operating as a realtor, that this book, Becoming Your Own Banker, came into my life from a very good friend of mine who told me to go buy it. And after I read this book, it just changed everything for me. It fundamentally has restructured my mindset, everything I think about life. Getting to know the author, who became my friend and my mentor, I loved him dearly. He unfortunately graduated in March of 2019 at the age of 88. He would have said, Nelson Nash would have said he was 88 revolutions around the sun. He was calling people from his deathbed. He was about to go into a surgery. He didn't think he was coming out. And that's the kind of guy he was. He was always giving and working until, because he would say things. It's more about the message than it is about the man. And so a lot of character building traits that I would think I was able to amplify from just the experience of getting to know him. He was married to his wife, Mary, for, I believe, close to 60 years. When you think about that, and you think about how many times do you meet someone that's been married for 60 years in the day and age we live in, there's I think a lot less of that going on. And so those are, traits and characteristics that I wanted to embrace and take on into my own life. And so when you have someone who creates an amazing example for you, we have an opportunity to learn vicariously through the wisdom, opportunities, and the life experience of others, but also from their failures and areas where things didn't go well. So every time that someone around you does something you don't like, or you don't think is a fit, or you don't see a result that you like, there's an opportunity for you to learn in what they've done. So the people that, are smashing their head against the wall, and the people that are, winning and, making touchdowns all day long, you have an opportunity to learn from both of these experiences. And I think at an early age, that was something I was able to learn and embrace through the circumstance of being in the portable toilet business, to be honest. So, moving forward to 2019, when this book came to my life, it just changed everything. And there's not a single aspect of my life that hasn't been positively impacted by it, essentially.
So now you make that shift, you transition from, hey, electrician for a good period of time, want to do something different, read the book, changes your life. And so now what did that put you on as far as a career path? In other words, you're saying, hey, I know I want to do something different. I've got this idea, or I've got, read this book and given me a good direction. Now, how did you set up a business around that, and kind of how did that evolve and iterate as you went through it?
That's a really good question. So, when it was time to leave my electrical career, I knew it was time. I had a plan around how I was going to do it. I was fairly involved in real estate from my personal investment standpoint. I was involved in like networking groups and that sort of thing around that environment. So that's where my, really my contact base and like my joy was coming from, was being around those types of people. So getting my real estate license was a natural kind of transition. But I knew as I was getting the real estate license, taking the course, completing that, and getting started in that industry, I already knew before I even signed up for the course that it was going to be transitional. I knew that that wasn't the thing I was going to be doing. I didn't know what the thing I was going to be doing was. I just knew it was on the other side of that. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I didn't have a vision. I just fundamentally knew at my core, this is just something I'm able to do that I probably will enjoy and I'll probably excel at, but it's not the thing I'm meant to be doing. I always knew, that I meant to be in the environment of educating people in some way to take more control over their financial life. And that doesn't mean investing their money. That means educating them on how they can have more control over their money. I just didn't know what was going to be the thing that was going to, transpire to allow me to do that effectively. Real estate was one category where that made sense, but it wasn't the only one. And so I knew I wasn't kind of married to that. So then after being licensed for, roughly about a year, and first year in any kind of business is usually not an easy one, as I'm sure that you've had lots of guests on your program who've talked about that. But when the book came into my life, I realized that this is the thing I'd been looking for. And in fact, I was actually really frustrated and irritated with people for quite a while. I had like a bit of a chip on my shoulder, which isn't normally like me, because fundamentally, in order to do the thing that, is talked about in this book, we teach people how to have that autonomy and control of their personal economy through their day-to-day cash flow and optimize it for utilization for the many things in their life they're going to be putting their money to work on, whether it's buying cars, investing, paying their property, or whatever it is that capital is going to. We're trying to optimize it so that it can do more jobs for you throughout your lifetime and do a lot of tax-free things at the same period. So understanding that in order to do that, I had to go get an insurance license, which meant I had to have another governing license plus the one I already had in real estate. I wasn't too happy about that. I don't know about you. I'm not a big fan of let's call it Big Brother, overseeing everything I do and putting guardrails around my ability to communicate with other human beings. So I was really like stuck in a bit of a crux point about that, I think. And ultimately, I was being snippy with people around me because I didn't want to go get a government license. But I realized that, okay, this is the right thing to do. If I really believe in this, it comes down to this. When you know something, you go out for a steak dinner and you have an incredible meal, great service. I mean, everything is just pristine. You're going to go tell your friends and family about that. You're not going to just keep that, close to the chest and just like, that's only your restaurant. Like you're never going to tell anyone about it because you just want to like hoard it in some way. So if you wouldn't do that for a great meal place that you would go for, a restaurant, well, you can't do that with life-changing information that you now know. So I just felt compelled, and I felt this is the only way that I can proceed. If I don't share this with people, what wasn't shared with me, my parents didn't know what the $40,000 of money that I spent at real estate gurus and courses and events in the previous 10 years of my life trying to advance my financial education. None of those people told me that in 92 pages, I got a better financial education. If I don't share that with other people, what the hell does that say about me? So I was compelled. I could not in my integrity sit on my laurels and do nothing. It just didn't fit. So I made the decision, and then that's how, jumping into business. So the colleague, his name is Jason. He's actually the co-host of our podcast, Wealth Without Bay Street. He's the one who told me to get the book. At that point, he had also made a similar decision as I had. And so I embraced that, and I decided to join forces with him and a few other team members. And then we began trying to teach this concept that Nelson put together to Canadian families. And eventually we built that into a course, which we delivered, multiple times a month for 3 or 4 years. until I eventually left that organization and forged ahead on my own. And now Jason and I have come back together again in the last 3.5 years with our new company, our podcast, and we're embracing changing the lives of thousands of families across Canada and the US at this point. And we're having a hell of a good time doing it.
That sounds like quite the journey and quite the fun time, and a lot of opportunities yet lie ahead. And kind of with that, so as you kind of caught up to the present day, where do you kind of see, if you're to project out in the next 6 to 12 months, where do you see things headed? Kind of what's the next steps for you?
It's a super good question. I mean, at the end of the day, you're only able to do so much as a physical human being with the time constraints that we have and the other responsibilities we have in life, wife, kids, the things that you need to do that are important. But if you believe that you're adding value into the world, you have to start changing the questions that you ask yourself about how can you achieve scale where you can help the most amount of people. If you yourself have limitations, which we all do to some degree, then the only way you can multiply those is either through the use of people or technology. So we use a combination of those two things, but ultimately it's people first. People first relative to our clients, our team as we build and grow, but also in the way that we think beyond our own organization. So, we aren't the end all be all, and we don't want to be. What we want is freedom and control at the financial level on the personal economic household or the business economy that is controlled by individual people. We want that to control to rest with them, not with someone else. Every time that we give up control of our own financial identity and capacity and decision-making, whether it's through investments or something else, to another human being, we amplify the risk to the individual. Whereas probability is no one's going to care about or manage or take care of your money to the degree that you will, as long as you understand how. So if we can embrace those principles with more people, that's not limited to our organization. So what I see is really what Nelson and a gentleman who is a member of the board of directors of the Nelson Nash Institute, which is an educational organization based out of Birmingham, Alabama. I'm on the practitioner council, the first inaugural council of other practitioners that teach what we do. And there's quite a number of us all over North America, and we're growing and accelerating that. But if we can get 10% of the population, the idea of the tipping point, if you've ever read anything by Malcolm Gladwell, if you get 10% of a given population base embracing an idea, that idea becomes an unstoppable force within that population mechanism. So if we get 10% of the North American population embracing Nelson's concept, what we're doing is we're reducing the burden of the fractional reserve system. We're implementing personal autonomy and control and responsibility over capital at the you and me level. And that becomes an unstoppable force that can solve, really, in my opinion, a lot of societal issues and problems. So there's something much bigger at work here than just what Richard can do. It's what Richard can inspire others to do, and then the ripple effect of that as it spreads out over time. And so I'm just doing my best to channel my inner Nelson Nash, who put this all together and left it for me to be able to, in my opinion, embrace what he's done and see how many people I can help discover their inner Nelson, I guess I would say, along the path of life, and when relative to how it comes to control of their financial circumstances.
Well, sounds like plenty of fun yet to have in the future, and lots of things to or keep you busy. So with that, now as we've reached the present day of your journey, and even looking a bit into the future of where things are headed, great time to transition to the two questions always asked at the end of each episode. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
I would say the worst business decision I ever made was probably not moving forward quickly enough with the decision to start doing the infinite banking concept and to embrace it. I mean, not that it would have saved me a lot of time, but I think the period where I was humming and hawing about government overreach by having an extra license really was an unnecessary circumstance. And any piece of time I could have back to begin this journey just a little bit earlier, those are more families I could have helped.
No, I think that, and that one's always a hard one. You can tell yourself, it's never a good time. And I think that there's never an ideal or a perfect time. At least there's better times than others for when to get started. But oftentimes you keep worrying or pushing it out or waiting for that ideal time and look back and wish you'd done it sooner. So certainly an easy mistake to make, but a great one to learn from. Second question now that I like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Hands down, I would recommend that everyone understands what their Kolbe score is, Kolbe, Kolbe.com, the Kolbe Index. That has been a game changer for me, and it's allowed me the permission to double down on my natural instinctual talents. It's not a personality assessment. It's about how you instinctually get stuff done, and where your use of energy units in a given day, week, or year can cause possible potential burnout with things. So for me, it's something I probably communicate with people on an almost daily basis, and that directly leads to my connection with the Strategic Coach organization, which I'm a member of, and I would highly encourage anyone on their entrepreneurial journey to understand their Kolbe and then get involved with Strategic Coach, because the people, collaborations, connections, and the communication level about thinking bigger, the idea that 10x is easier than 2x, and Who Not How, both are books written by Dan Sullivan, who runs Strategic Coach. I mean, those have been game changers, and they all integrate or overlap with instinctual talents that Kolbe identifies.
Awesome. Definitely think that's a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. So with that, now as we wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Super simple. I mean, I would recommend, happy to give away a copy of our book, Cash Follows the Leader. That's available as a free digital download if you go to cashfollows.com. That's cashfollows.com. And we also have a 7-step guide that helps people understand what's the proper learning journey to decide if the idea of the infinite banking concept or becoming your own banker is the right fit for you. And you can go to 7steps.ca. That's 7steps.ca. For a great resource. It has links to direct video content and other actionable items in that journey. So great resources, and all of those will probably lead you to Richard in some way or another.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you, the listeners who are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help along your journey with any patents, trademarks, or copyrights, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Richard, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Much appreciated.